6 places in the calendar for different chapters. Some are 9, 10, and then I dispersed 2 of you in each unit, the last 3 units, so that you will see what chapter you have. But I am sending you a message. I will send you a direct message to say, this is the chapter that you should be reporting on, and then you'll have until the 8th, that is Friday of next week, to tell me who you selected from that chapter to do your report on. And if you have trouble finding someone and need some help, I'll be happy to show you where the chapter is. And we can work together with it. The earlier you sign up, the better, because it is unlikely that you might find that someone else has already taken your person, but that is a possibility. I do want them by the 8th, and your being late on that will subtract a few points from your overall score on the oral report. But I understand that if someone has already selected your person, you will have to submit it again. So just keep that in mind. And I'm looking forward to hearing them. I always enjoy the reports, and sometimes I get, I get them about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, and then I find someone who picks some rather obscure individual that was leading a train executive, and some of the chapters have some real possibilities of some interesting people. So look for that, send it to me. I don't care who it is. If it's in your chapter, you can use him or her. So let's pray. Father, we do pray that you will be with us in this class and help us as we recognize the importance of American history. And today, looking at those people who were living here before Columbus came, the Columbian time, and how this impacts us as Americans and our interaction there. We pray for your special grace and blessing on each of these lessons. We look forward to what you have for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. And I'm going to just take a look here at what I have laid out for today. Today and tomorrow I have laid down for this material, and I might put together a few slide presentations of pictures I took at some of these sites, because I've been to a bunch of Indian locations, and I will have more time tomorrow to work on that than right now. But in Georgia, in this other places in the South, there's lots of Indian mounds. In the West, there's Indian ruins, places to visit. But here are some theories about how the American Indians made it to North America. Because as we know, we're not dealing with this in this course per se, but creation, everyone goes back to Adam and Eve, and they were somewhere else. They were not here, and people went elsewhere. So how did people get here? Now, one of the theories is that after the flood, there was a significant buildup of ice at the poles because of frozen flood water. And this meant that the oceans were shallower millennia ago than they are now. And the ice caps have been melting ever since. And so with there being less water in the oceans, at some point there was a land bridge between Siberia and North America that allowed people to move from Asia to North America, and that the North American and South American populations are individuals that followed the game or followed whatever across this area and settled here in various parts of North America, Alaska, and then down into South America. That's how they got there. So that, to me, is the most plausible theory as to how people came to North America. And then eventually, when the water began to fill up this the shallower areas, it became separated and no longer could you travel back and forth. There's another theory, if you're Mormon, this is the theory. Migrations of the children of Israel to North America, and that the American Indians are the descendants of various ancient peoples that came through the British Isles across, basically like a land bridge, but across from Europe to North America, and were here in North America and were populated here. Then there was a rebellion in the New World in which there were Nephilim and some other, couple other group, Lemonites, and so they started fighting each other, and the very last of the holy Indians that came over were killed, and he wrote, before he died, he wrote the story of the Book of Mormon for posterity's sake. If you read the Book of Mormon, it was buried somewhere on the Yucatan Peninsula down here in Mexico, but miraculously it was discovered by Joseph Smith on the Mount Cumorah here in New York. I have been there. I have been on the mountain to near the spot where it was buried. Of course, it's not there then anymore because it's been taken to heaven according to Mormon theory. So you don't dig the mountain up looking for the golden plates. They are not there. Anyway, that is the Mormon theory. Then there's another theory that an Egyptian colony, that Egyptians, and they did have some significant sailing ships, sailed across the Atlantic Ocean and came to the New World, especially to Mexico, and this is explained into why they built pyramids in Mexico, that they were following their ancient craftsmanship of what was going on in Egypt. That's unlikely to be true too, because you can see that people built pyramids in Asia, India, and mounds all through North America, perfecting their craft as they go down into Mexico and into South America, where they really begin to build some significant pyramids. So that's not likely to be any Egyptian connection, but nonetheless, that is a theory. So for me, the Amerindians are probably Asians, Indian-type peoples that come across from Siberia, Mongolian types, into North America, and then spread out and adapt to their environment and develop all of the different cultures and languages that we see in the New World. Now, here is a map of basically North America. I'm not dealing with South America or the Aztecs, the Incas, and other people groups, because we're dealing with America here. But these are the tribes that are most important. You have the Inuits, or Alaskan Eskimos. Eskimos and Inuits, there's a little difference there. I graduated from KBC with an Eskimo, Mary Sacra, and she would let you know there's a difference between Alaskan Eskimos and Alaskan Indians, and they don't get along necessarily. But nonetheless, the Inuit tribes, the people who live along the coast in the cold weather, are up here in the north. The American Plains Indians, probably the Sioux, spelled Sioux, but the Sioux, the Apache, the various other Indians, those are there in the plains. Pueblo cultures, the Navajo, others of the southwest of that type, the Hopi Indians and such are here in the southwest. The mound builders, the the Mississippians and the Ohio culture are in this general area, also over into Georgia. And then the Iroquois, which were probably the most developed nation state of Indians in western New York, Ohio, and into Ontario. So that's the groups that we're dealing with. There are over 200 different languages spoken by American Indians in North America. That shows a very diverse population and a degree of isolation that they're going to be developing these separate languages. Some of them were small bands of hunter-gatherers. or you have like the Iroquois, which are a well-organized state, a multi-tribe state in which they had an agreement to cooperate with each other, almost similar to the idea of the United States being a federal government with constituent parts. They were fabulous as a nation. And they subsisted on hunting and fishing until knowledge of food raising spread from Mesoamerica. It is interesting that it looks like the idea of growing crops, especially corn and beans and squash, moves from Mesoamerica, down here, north, even though my theory would suggest that these people were here longer than the people down there. But the information of how you grow crops and do farming comes north into North America from Mexico, Mesoamerica, and places like that. Okay. Now, the Iroquois, looking at those. Now, the Iroquois are basically set up here in New York. Today, in my opinion, it would be hard to imagine that these nations would have been dispossessed of their land in the same way they are now and relegated to reservations and such. So many of these would be seen as nations, and clearly this would be one. The 6 Iroquois nations in 1720, the Seneca, the Cayuga, the Tuscarora, the Onondaga, the Oneida, and the Mohawk, were the main organized tribes here in New York. They created a distinctive culture by 1000 AD, controlling the Great Lakes toward the Atlantic. And they formed the League of Five, some would say 6 nations, depending on how you organize it. The Mohawk were the keepers of the eastern door. Then you had the Oneida, the Onondaga, and the Cayuga. The Tuscarora were a subset. And then the Seneca were keepers of the western door. The Iroquois had the advantage of being agriculturalists with permanent villages. You can see they built structures out of bark and homes of that type. No teepees. You know, there was a day whenever you went to an Indian encampment or display, you'd have a totem pole and a teepee, even if those Indians had never seen those things. Because that's what Indians do, and they all say "Hal" and put their hand up when they talk and so forth. Those kinds of culturalisms are gone. But here, they would have had permanent villages and would have built their villages out of bark and even having some more permanent structures. For the Iroquois, the women owned the homes and garden and choose the leaders. Now, the women cannot be leaders. So a woman cannot be chief, but the women decide who the chief is and can fire the chief if he's not doing a good job. So the women control things, they control the land, and you can't be a member of the Iroquois nation if your mother is not an Indian. So it's very important, if you're an Indian man and you want your children to be part of the culture, you have to marry an Indian. An Indian woman could marry a non-Indian, and her children would still be part of her clan, but the men don't have that issue. Now, we're going to watch some videos as we do this about these various cultures. This is something that was put together years ago by the I think it was Nova Special. I don't know if that program is still on public TV, but and they do a great job of looking at Indians from various, very sensitively and from various perspectives, and one of them is the Iroquois.
myself a citizen of the United States or an American citizen. Never.
I know American people. They're great people. You know, I've met many friends of the American people. When you talk about American government, that's something else again. I believe that we will endure any problem, and I believe that we will always be here.
I want to just check, I may have loaded.
These nations are recognized as sovereigns by the federal government.
Okay, I'm going to switch to a different thing because I have several of these and I think I pulled up the wrong.
American citizen. Never.
Of three of these nations. One is about the Navajo, one is about...
Here we
It's the
go.
capital of the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy. The Iroquois Grand Council meets here. The Onondaga are the keepers of the central fire. The trappings that distinguish a foreign nation may be missing. No passing through customs, no border guards. But this small Indian nation vigorously defends its sovereign status, its separateness from the large nation that surrounds it.
We're still here in New York, in this small piece of land, battling to maintain ourselves, but they were unable to move us. We did not move. We were like a rock that a river went around, and we're still here.
There are 14 hereditary chiefs among the Onondaga. There are the clan mothers who nominate them for a lifetime, but who can depose the chief who strays from his duty. There is no police force here, no Bureau of Indian Affairs with federal grants. The Onondaga travel on their own, not United States passports. These are now recognized by other nations of the world.
And this symbol. It's her stamp.
Clan mother Audrey Shenandoah issues the Onondaga passports.
Well, this is just another point in proving our sovereignty as a nation of people, a separate nation of people. I've never considered myself a citizen of the United States or an American citizen. Never. We had 3 women who were going to Iroh. They had their American passports. And I said, well, what do you want this for if you're going as an American citizen? She said, well, you know, the Americans aren't in very good graces over there. So she said, if we get into trouble or if we're hijacked or anything, we'll use our Haudenosaunee passport. So, you know, that wasn't really any reason for using our passport. I was going to tell them, no, I'm not going to give you one. But it's not our way to reject our people.
Chief Oren Lyons defines sovereignty in simple, direct terms.
So sovereignty can mean all kinds of things, but what it means fundamentally is the ability for a nation, people to determine for themselves what their life and what their lifestyle is going to be. So sovereignty is quite simple. It's the act thereof.
Ray Elm is a Christian. He calls himself progressive, not a traditional.
Sovereignty is a big word. It always is hell with some nations and it's good for other nations, let me put it that way. Name one nation in the world that doesn't have to go and shake Uncle Sam's hand nowadays. Or go to somebody else. We can't do it all.
Christians and traditionals live and die side by side here, but the Haudenosaunee, the Longhouse people, direct the affairs of state. Once the Six Nations were a force to be reckoned with. The Oneida, Seneca, Mohawk, Cayuga, Onondaga, and Tuscarora made peace among themselves, and they gained control of all the land from New Hampshire to Lake Michigan and the Hudson Bay to Tennessee. Today, land diminished, they reach out to other indigenous people and carry the message of the Peacemaker, the legendary founder of the Confederacy, to the world. In 1987, in a London World Conference on Survival, charismatic tribal leader Oren Lyons met with today's peacemakers, such as the Dalai Lama and Mother Teresa.
Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but a thread of it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves.
You're on Indian land.
Political activism, too, has been ongoing in Six Nations history. The 1968 Mohawk blockade of the international bridge between Canada and the United States was the culmination of a long fight for free trade and passage across that border, promised to the Iroquois by the Jay Treaty of 1794. The battle was important to the Red Power movement of the 60s, but the protest wasn't new. It started in 1920, when the Indian Defense League of America was formed to protest lack of recognition of treaty rights by both the United States and Canada. Activism is an outgrowth of the Peacemaker's ancient message and a hallmark of the tribe's identity. But tradition, too, provides a rallying point. As cultural traditions persist, so identity persists. Lacrosse is an ancient tradition that has survived all change that has passed this way, both bad and good. We found Chief Oren Lyons watching his grandson play lacrosse at the box.
They learn early. Lacrosse is the sport. Much more than a game, it's the fabric of Six Nations community. Everything revolves around it. Nice shot. No sweat, huh? Put it right in there. It's like this all the Six Nations. They all play. Kids running around all the different reservations right now. It gives them a reference point. It also allows them to be like the bigger guys.
Grandpa,
Yes, sir.
do you have a drink?
Do I have any water? No, I don't have any at all. You guys don't have no water pill here? Why not?
For some, this tradition leads to college scholarships. In any case,
That's
the
sad.
future of the nation rests with these young
They
warriors.
don't have a water pail.
In English, they call them the warriors, but it's not really the right word. What the word in our language, Hodiskanageta, says, he carries the burden of the bones of his people. In other words, everybody who is not a chief or one of the grandmother or one of the faith keepers has this responsibility because that's what they are all called.
It's a grave responsibility. Survival is still challenged from within and without.
It's hard. It's hard, very hard. Our children are wanting teens, they're wanting music, they're wanting all these things. There's an intrusion, yes. There's an intrusion, and that intrusion carries with it a philosophy, and the philosophy of materialism. And that's a very destructive force in our perspective.
Onondaga is a nation on wheels, crossing the borders daily to the source of the modern and material, to where the jobs are. It tests sorely the ties of nationhood. Grandmother Alice Papineau, niece Melody Lazor, and her daughter Ashley.
I think like every individual would like, nice things, a nice home and a new car and, all that is very nice to have, but, your job, you have to be at it when there are ceremonies going on and you're not able to attend because of your job and you can't say, well, I have ceremonies, I have to go. So like, it just seems like it's a constant pull between, two worlds, your traditional way and, your job to survive, so you're just constantly pulling all the time.
Become a 20th century tradition for Iroquois men. In the crowded cities like New York or Philadelphia, men find a common ground in nationhood. As it often goes with countrymen far away from home, the tales of Iroquois agility and the building of monuments like Rockefeller Center are passed along from father to son.
Well, they make good money, although it's a dangerous job, and so many of them are cripples.
Rather be home. Just don't pay the bills, that's all. There isn't enough work up there in this line. Be up there. Yeah. Sometimes can't make it. Gotta work. The way it goes. Something you gotta do. Time for me to go to work. Well, you gotta go back.
Iron workers' life is a very lonely one. They're in major cities. It's a lonely life away from their families. Husband was an iron worker at one time, and I went with him on all his job in major cities. Took up light housekeeping rooms like that with my two boys. And when they became school age, and I had to stay home, much to my surprise, my husband took up tree surgery. And that's what his work was, so that he could be home. I was surprised at that.
Alice Papineau says her motto is, life is full of wonderful surprises. And she believes in taking chances. In 1983, in her small trading post, she sheltered fugitive American Indian movement leader Dennis Banks for almost a year. Traditionally, Onondaga women ran the villages while males hunted, traded, and went to war. Today, many of these articulate women act as ambassadors in the United States and beyond.
I go too far away, I fly. The one technology of the white men I like is flying. I enjoy that. Well, we have all kinds of invitations to go to different parts of the country.
When the most majestic symbol of the Six Nations Confederacy, the Great White Pine, arrived in Washington, D.C., Alice Papineau was there along with Head Chief Leon Shenandoah and Chief Oren Lyons. According to tradition, the weapons of war are buried in the ground of an uprooted tree, washed away, and the Great White Pine is replanted. Hence we say, we buried the hatchet.
In today's times, the idea of peace, world peace, is in everybody's minds. I think that the original symbol, the Great White Pine, that the peacemaker brought way back there 1,000 years ago, is very important today, and it's something that people can grasp, and young children can grasp, and everybody can see. When the peacemaker set down the laws, he said the woman is very important, and so he made it to be that we would follow the woman, that it would be a matrilineal society, and that it would be the woman who would determine what the nation and the clan of the children would be. And so in our society, which is so old, he made it so that there could never be a bastard.
Yeah, we have clans as our way of life. And when you have children without clans, you don't have anything left.
The nation's membership is based on the clan system. To be part of the nation, one must be part of a clan. Women are the landowners, and their children are of their clan. When an Onondaga woman marries, her husband comes here, and their children will be Onondaga. When an Onondaga man marries, he will leave to join his bride on her land. In 1974, this issue created internal strife.
And we had 36 of our youth who married non-Indians. And they brought them back here. Many of them brought their wives back here. No taxes, no rent.
After the city of Syracuse and reservation high schools were centralized, intermarriage with non-Indians increased. When the new brides returned to the reservation, they were not part of a clan, nor landowners, and it foreshadowed a time when most people here would be without a clan. On March 26, 1974, the Council of Onondaga Chiefs voted to evict all non-Indian people living on nation land.
All I could see was this generations coming when most of our people out here would not have a clan. So something had to be done.
It was a difficult and serious decision. Many parents of the newlyweds protested when young Onondaga were told they could either stay without their brides or leave with them. Some stayed, others followed their spouses.
But now they're alienating themselves from their nation.
They found out how much they lost, by marrying non-Indians.
We're intermarrying with all of our Confederacy people throughout the Iroquois Succession Confederacy. Our girls are marrying Western Indians and bringing them back here, and they're welcome, as long as they enrich the Indian blood.
In 1987, the Iroquois Confederacy welcomed a long-awaited recognition from the United States Congress when that body acknowledged the contribution of the Confederacy to the development of the United States Constitution. But with the Onondaga, as with any nation, there is divisiveness. There are internal problems and ongoing outside pressures, and endemic within the Indian nations, the threat of taxation on nation business. The loss of language, now used casually and interchangeably with English, the need to leave the reservation for school and jobs. But there remains a vision of the future for future generations.
That our present generation of chiefs are probably not the quality of the previous generations. We don't know. But our mandate is to take care of our generation here and then to see to the future generations. And that's we do the best we can.
We don't do things in a hurry like our brothers, the so-called white man. We don't move as fast. We're on a slower pace. But I hope that in time we will have some of our dreams come true, like building houses. I've been to many places in this world, but I always come back. This is always home. I love my hills. Onondaga, means the people of the hills. That's what it means.
And so this capital of the Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy, this small nation of people who travel routinely beyond its borders, is within but not of the United States. This always has been, this is today, Onondaga.
Okay, so I'll stop that at that spot.
So here is the Onondaga, the Six Nations. If you want to visit this, it's up in this area of New York, central New York, probably near Rome, somewhere in there, New York. So another Indian group here are the Mounds people. Now the cultures of the mound builders are divided into two major groups. There are Ohio Valley cultures and Mississippians. The Ohio Valley's cultures could be found in Hopewell, which Hopewell culture have round or oval houses with more protective roofs made of skin bark from trees and combination of thatched and clay sides. Then they bury their dead in large cone-shaped mounds. The Oneida live in circular houses made out of poles and covered with mats and thatched roofs. They bury their dead also in cone-shaped mounds of earth, but smaller than the others. And they survived on fish, game, nuts, and other plants, and mastered the manufacture of tools and pottery and copper jewelry. If you go to Chillicothe, Ohio, there is some mounds up in that area that are preserved as the Hopewell National Historic Site. And I've never been there, but that's one of the historic sites I'd like to visit. They were already starting to go under the plow and being torn down in the late 1800s. And these are pretty well a miracle to be saved. This is a rather intriguing one. This is in southern Ohio, and it is a mound that is made in the shape of a snake. Do you see it? The tail is curled up here. And here the mouth is open and it's swallowing an egg. This is Ohio State Park, taken from above, but you can visit it, hike around it. You're not allowed to go on the mound. Or you can climb up on some towers where you can see a greater perspective. I've never seen that in person either, but would love to visit that at some point. Now, the Mississippian cultures. They lived in houses along the Mississippi River. They are more well known for being in the South. They built platform mounds on which whole villages or buildings were built on top of the mound. So they built huge mounds that were designed as a way to raise a platform. Now, the largest one that is still in existence is east of St. Louis. The largest was actually hacked to pieces in the late 1800s to make way for downtown St. Louis. So they tore the mound away. But they built their houses in what is known as wattle and daub construction, in which they make a lattice work, cover it over with plaster, or mud and dung and plaster mixed together, spread it on, and then paint it. And this is something that was done in Europe, and then with a thatched roof. So they lived in a structure like that, built on top of the mounds. They mastered the raising of beans and maize and squash, and they tied their religion to the planting and harvesting cycles. The vessels found indicate the presence of human sacrifice, or at least there seems to be some ritualistic use of dead bodies afterward by their people. Now, okay, these are some pictures that we took on our trip in 2021 in Macon, Georgia at the Ocmulgee Mounds. This are some ancient mounds that were that are in Macon, Georgia. This is Berwyn, getting ready to go into a underground little home or ritual structure that they have reconstructed. There he is. We were all dressed ready for church. We visited this early in the morning before church. We went to the Macon Church, First Church of the Nazarene, if anyone. There's Joy. We're on our way to Florida. We're down here in the base, in the entryway. This would have been where the chief would sit during the ceremony. And they tell me that on my birthday, February 22nd, is one of the days when the sun will rise or set at the right angle, that light will shine in and illuminate this rock. October 22nd is another day. So those are the 2 days of the year that this will happen. Joy's determined to get there on my birthday, at some point. This is what it would look like on the outside. So this is the mound. You wouldn't climb on that. But inside here is this ritualist hut. That is one of the big earth mounds. You were able to climb up and walk around on top. But this would be man-made. They would have brought the dirt one basketful at a time and built this mound to make a raised platform here. And this is a rather small one. They made huge ones that were sometimes acres and acres wide and raised up 100 feet in the air. So this would take some effort to do by hand. So I commend them for doing that. We were able to climb up on top. Here we are on top of the mound, looking around at the general area. There's Berwyn inside the visitor center, but pretending to be sitting in the mound. This was during COVID, so every now and then we had to put on our mask. That's how the Earth Lodge would have looked when it was being used for worship by the Indians. There's me, sitting there. So, that is, these are the mountains. I don't have time to show our video today here, but I do want to. We will get to that at the beginning of our next class. But, just to take a look here, here are the cultures of the Southwest. Now, the cultures of the Southwest introduced, they grew beans and squash, as I mentioned, built homes out of adobe and other masonry bricks, and produced beautiful pottery. And the main thing about them is the building of grand architecture. The most famous is that of the Anasazi, who are named by the Indians themselves as the Ancient Ones. We don't know what they called themselves, but the Navajo called them the Ancient Ones, like the people that were there long before us. And this is the Mesa Verde, the ruins there at Mesa Verde National Park, is our great architectural presentation. In fact, they say the largest apartment complex built in America prior to the 1820s, when a bigger one was built in New York, is right here, built by the Indians. They grew maize and made pottery stored in warehouses-like structures, manufacturers of cloth, cotton cloth. They used irrigation, collecting runoff from buildings in dikes and terraced hills, subsoil by building sand dunes at the base of hills to keep the runoff water from flowing away. If you're living in the desert, you have to collect and preserve water. Best known for their architectural accomplishments, disappearance of the Anasazi are today still a mystery. They don't know where they went or why they disappeared. 1300 AD is about when they disappeared.
285 miles east of Capitol Reef, in the southwest corner of Colorado, lies Mesa Verde National Park, a bastion of the largest archaeological preserve in the United States, and one of its oldest mysteries. These magnificent cliff cities were constructed by a prehistoric Stone Age people. The Navajo called them the Ancient Ones, the Anasazi. These famous structures are only part of the Mesa Verde story. The Anasazi arrived here just 600 years after the birth of Christ. They remained on the mesa for over 700 years. Then, they disappeared. Centuries earlier, their ancestors made a remarkable transformation. From hunter-gatherers to farmers, working with simple tools. They coaxed squash, beans, and corn from the desert soil. At first, they dwelled in pit homes, then pueblos resembling those still used by the Hopi Indians of Arizona. It wasn't until the end of their tenure on the mesa that they constructed these fantastical structures. Cliff Palace, with over 200 rooms. And since its discovery, this cliff city has left archaeologists with one lingering question. Why? Why did they leave their pueblos for the cliff dwellings? And where did they go? Were they driven away by drought? By wars? Stored food and pottery hint that they had planned to return, but they never did. Today these ruins stand as a monument to their past.
Now, I've never been there. This past summer, we visited the Southwest, and there were two places here. This is a panoramic shot of a settlement in northern Arizona, not far from the Grand Canyon. And it's a big, long Indian word that starts with a W that I may write for you on the board someday, but I was having trouble pronouncing it while I was there. But you can see here's the main house, and this is what I consider to be an ancient Gaga pit, because it was a ball court. That's what it was for. So I thought, hey, they were playing sports where they were bouncing balls around in a circle in the 700 years ago. Here's Berwyn, and we were taking a trip through here to explore to get our Junior Ranger badge. There's Jen and Joy. Joy's in her Junior Ranger outfit. These are definitely places which are typical for us to stop at. We went to 25 different national park sites during that trip. There's the ball court. Looking at it from back, that's a different one. There were two of these that they were using. We found this lizard that came to greet us. We're in this little storage area inside the ruins. There you can see, looking at Jeanette and Joy, and that was back in sort of like an area where they would store food. We visited that place, and let's see here. There's another one in New Mexico. The day before. Yeah, these are some nice pictures too. That's another pit.